Princess stood at the highest balcony of the palace, staring at the horizon where the twin suns dipped slowly behind the mountains. The sky was painted in shades of crimson and gold, but her heart felt restless, a storm she could not calm. Rumors had spread that someone had arrived at the palace gates, a visitor claiming to have once saved her life. At first, she thought it was just a soldier seeking fame, or perhaps a wandering diplomat seeking her attention. Yet something about the message stirred a memory deep inside her, one she had tried to forget. Her mind drifted to the day when she was only a child, no taller than a young alien sapling. The kingdom had been under attack, her burning as enemy warships surrounded the capital. Chaos had erupted, screams echoing through the marble halls. In the chaos, a ceiling had collapsed, trapping her under heavy stone and debris. She remembered the fear, the sharp pain, the helplessness that had nearly claimed her. And then a small hand had appeared in hers. A voice, young but unwavering, had called her name and pulled her to safety. That boy had risked everything without hesitation, without thinking of his own life. She had never seen his face clearly, only the courage in his eyes. And then he was gone, vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. Now, centuries later, the message said he had returned. Heart pounded. Could it truly be him? A mortal. Her people rarely lived as long as she had, and humans were said to be fragile, short-lived, and weak compared to their advanced alien physiology. And yet the thought that he had survived across time, across worlds, filled her with a mixture of hope and disbelief. She descended the grand staircase, her robes flowing behind her like liquid silver, every step weighted with anticipation. The palace gates opened, and there he stood. A man now, taller than she remembered, with hair streaked by time and a body that bore the marks of countless battles. His clothes were plain, rough around the edges, unlike the ornate uniforms of her royal guards. Yet there was something unmistakable about him, something that made her chest tighten and her throat dry. She stepped forward, feeling the eyes of the court upon her, yet unable to look away. "Princess," he said, his voice steady, calm, and familiar all at once. The single word struck her like a lightning bolt. He spoke it the same way he had centuries ago, with the same quiet certainty that he would always protect her. Felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away, unwilling to let them fall before the court. She wanted to reach for him, to run into his arms, but the rules of her world, the expectations of her title, held her still. The court murmured, confusion rippling through the nobles and guards. Many whispered about the humans standing at the gates, some suspicious, some fearful, hardly noticed. Her gaze was fixed on him, drinking in every detail. His eyes, the same warm, unwavering gaze that had saved her life, met hers. She could see the faint lines of age, the scars from battles fought across distant worlds, yet beneath it all was the courage she had remembered so vividly. In that moment, time seemed to suspend itself. Could feel her heart beating in a rhythm that echoed the memory of her childhood fear and the bravery that had saved her life. Questions swirled in her mind. How had he survived for so long among beings far stronger than him? Why had he returned now? And most importantly, why did seeing him again feel like coming home after centuries of wandering in loneliness? The wind picked up, brushing against the balcony, carrying the faint scent of the distant sea. Took a deep breath, steadying herself. Whatever the answer, she knew one thing with certainty. The boy who had once saved her life had returned, and somehow this mortal, fragile, human, and entirely unexpected, was about to change her world forever. The palace was alive with whispers. Nobles and courtiers murmured in quiet corridors, glances sharp with suspicion. A human had never entered the royal halls uninvited, much less claimed a connection to the princess. Some doubted his story, others feared the implications. But Princess moved through the halls as though nothing else existed. Every eye followed her, yet her focus was only on him. The man who had once saved her walked with careful steps. His human body was smaller than the aliens around him, his muscles lean and his movements deliberate. Still, he carried himself with a quiet strength that made the guards uneasy. Watched him as he bowed deeply, eyes respectful, never arrogant. She remembered the small hand that had pulled her from danger, the courage that had sparked in his young heart, and now she saw it reflected in every measured step he took. During the council meeting, he remained silent, letting the advisors speak first. They questioned him with sharp words, their disbelief clear. "How does a human survive the strength of our kind?" one noble asked, voice dripping with doubt. Another scoffed, "Perhaps it is a trick, a lie to manipulate the princess." His heart tightened. She wanted to defend him, to shout at them, to demand that they see what she saw, but she could not yet. She had to understand herself first and understand him. Her mind drifted back to the siege, to the day he had saved her. The memory was vivid, the fear, the smoke, the collapse of stone and fire around her, and then his hand gripping hers with steady confidence. "I won't let anything happen to you," he had said, and somehow she had believed it. That boy, that human, had changed her world without knowing it. Now, centuries later, he had returned, older but no less brave, and could feel the same heartbeat of trust and hope stirring inside her. His voice broke her thoughts. "Princess, I only came because I remembered a promise," he said quietly. "I promised I would always protect you no matter what." His words were simple but heavy with meaning. She felt a lump in her throat. For centuries she had carried the burden of her crown, the expectations of her people, and the loneliness of long life. And yet, hearing that promise now, from the same mortal who had once risked everything for her, it felt like a bridge across time and space, a connection no one else could understand. The council continued but no longer heard them. Her eyes remained fixed on. She noticed the small details, the faint scar along his forearm, the way his fingers flexed even when at rest, the quiet steadiness in his gaze. All of it spoke of a life lived in challenge, yet filled with courage. She realized something profound. The humans were fragile in body, yes, but the strength of their heart could rival the mightiest warrior, and embodied that strength perfectly. As the meeting ended, followed him into the courtyard. The wind swept through her hair, carrying the scent of the palace gardens and the distant sea. She wanted to speak, to ask how he had survived, how he had come so far, and why he had returned. But words failed her. Instead, she simply walked beside him, feeling the same quiet assurance she had felt as a child. That night she could not sleep. Her chamber was filled with the moonlight that painted silver patterns across the floor. She thought of the hands that had saved her, of the human heart that had dared to love and protect across centuries. And she realized a dangerous truth. She was beginning to care for him, not as a princess to a hero, but as someone who had been saved and now could no longer imagine life without him. The thought both terrified and thrilled her. A human was forbidden by law, by custom, by everything her people had ever known. Yet her heart knew no law. It only knew the courage, the loyalty, and the love that had returned to her after so long. And in that quiet, lonely palace, whispered to the stars above, hoping that the boy who had once held her hand would understand that she remembered, that she had never forgotten, and that somehow fate had brought him back. The alarm bells rang across the palace as news of the approaching alien fleet reached the city. Ships larger than the tallest towers in the capital darkened the skies, their weapons gleaming like shards of deadly ice. The royal council immediately began planning defenses, their voices sharp with orders and fear. But Princess' eyes were fixed on. She had watched him move through the halls, seen the quiet determination in his stance, and now she knew that she could not ignore him. Her advisors protested. "Your Highness, a human cannot fight against them. He is fragile. He will die before he can even touch their soldiers," one said, shaking his head. Another added, "Do not endanger him. His presence here is risky enough." His heart ached at their words. She understood their caution, their fear for both and the kingdom. But she had seen bravery before, the kind that no training or armor could teach. Had that courage in his eyes. She trusted him. "I will not leave him behind," she said firmly. Her voice cut through the council chamber like a blade. "If he wishes to fight, he will fight. I will not allow fear to blind us to true strength." The room fell silent. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances, but decision was final. She knew she was risking everything, her reputation, her crown, and even her people's trust, but her heart told her that could make a difference. Bode, his expression calm but serious. "Princess, I will do my best," he said softly. His words were simple but felt the weight of centuries of courage in them. She nodded, a strange warmth filling her chest. Somehow, she believed that this mortal, this human who should have been weak, could help her protect everything she loved. Training began immediately. Soldiers, much larger and faster than moved in formation, weapons in hand. He stumbled at first, the weight of alien armor unfamiliar, the movements heavy and awkward. Watched from a balcony above, her stomach twisting with worry. Yet each time he fell, he rose again. Each mistake became a lesson, each setback a step forward. His determination was infectious. Soon, even the most skeptical soldiers began to mirror his focus, moving with renewed energy and hope. His mind worked differently from the aliens. He noticed patterns they ignored, thought in ways they never considered, realized that while he lacked their raw strength, he had something far more valuable: ingenuity. He crafted clever strategies, setting traps, using the environment to their advantage. Watched him from the edge of the training field, admiration burning in her chest. This human, smaller and seemingly fragile, could outthink warriors who had trained their entire lives for battle. One evening, as the sun dipped low, approached her quietly. "Princess," he said, his voice low, "I know they underestimate me, but I don't need to be like them. I just need to do what I know is right." His eyes held the same determination as the boy who had once saved her. His heart ached with a mixture of pride and longing. She wanted to tell him that she believed in him more than anyone else, that she had always remembered him, that he had changed her life in ways he would never know. The night grew darker, and the palace walls echoed with the distant hum of alien engines. Could feel the tension in every stone, every corridor, every heart around her. Yet she also felt a new energy stirring, a quiet hope that perhaps together they could face what seemed impossible. The human would fight beside them not because of strength but because of heart, and knew deep within her that sometimes the smallest spark could ignite the flame. As the twin moons rose above the city, casting silver light across the courtyard, whispered to herself almost like a prayer, "We will survive, we will fight, and you will be by my side." She did not know how the battle would unfold or if they would win, but one truth remained certain: she had chosen him, and in that choice the kingdom had a chance it had never had before. The morning sky was a pale gold when the first signs of treachery appeared. Alarms blared across the palace, their shrill cries echoing off marble walls. Soldiers ran in every direction, shouting orders, their faces pale with fear. Princess' heart pounded. The alien fleet had been approaching for days, but she had never expected the threat to come from within. A whisper of betrayal had reached her just hours before. One of the palace advisors, trusted and close to the royal family, had sold their secrets to the enemy. Discoveries about the alien fleet's weaknesses were now exposed. The fleet knew where to strike first, and the outer defenses were breached almost immediately. Explosions shook the walls, sending stones and dust into the air. Soldiers fell, cries of pain mingling with the roaring alarms. Rushed to the front lines, her heart heavy with fear. She had always faced battles with courage, but this felt different. This was not a distant threat. It was close, immediate, and deadly. The city she had sworn to protect was under fire, and her people were suffering. And yet, she felt a strange calm when she saw moving among the chaos. He was small, no taller than a child compared to the alien soldiers, but he moved with confidence that his size. With every step he placed traps, shouted orders, and pulled the soldiers out of harm's way. His chest tightened as she watched him. He was wounded in the skirmish, a scratch on his arm, a bruise forming on his cheek, but he did not falter. He reminded her of the boy who had once saved her life, fearless, determined, unstoppable. A group of alien warriors charged toward the princess, their claws sharp and glowing with energy. Froze, panic rising, but stepped in. Without hesitation, he blocked their path, using a fallen metal beam as a shield. The alien snarled, surprised by his defiance. He moved with a combination of instinct and clever strategy, dodging attacks and using their own momentum against them. Even the seasoned warriors around him were in awe. "Princess, stay back," shouted. His voice carried over the chaos, steady and commanding. Obeyed, hiding behind a collapsed wall while watching him fight. Every move was precise, every decision calculated, yet driven by pure courage. He was mortal, vulnerable, and yet somehow stronger than anyone she had ever known. Her heart ached with admiration and fear all at once. The palace trembled under the assault, the remaining soldiers pointing out weaknesses in the enemy's formation. Using clever traps and the environment around them, he created pockets of safety for civilians and soldiers alike. His bravery inspired those who had been paralyzed by fear. One by one, soldiers followed his lead, fighting with renewed determination. In the middle of the chaos, realized something profound. Strength was not only measured by size, weaponry, or skill. True strength came from heart, from courage, from the willingness to protect those you loved. Had that strength in abundance. She had once thought that mortals were weak, fragile beings, but now she saw that they could be extraordinary. When the breach was finally contained, collapsed against a wall, panting but alive, ran to his side, tears streaming down her face. She pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat, and whispered, "You are incredible, stronger than anyone I have ever known." He smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I only do what I must," he said softly. "For you, for all of us." The sun set behind the shattered walls, casting long shadows across the battlefield. Stood beside her, heart full of awe and gratitude. The kingdom had survived, but barely. And she knew, without a doubt, that it was not the mightiest warriors who had saved them. It was a mortal, a human, whose heart refused to yield, whose courage inspired others, and whose love for her could move mountains. The battle had barely subsided when the aftermath began to weigh heavily on the city. Fires burned across the outskirts, thick smoke curling into the sky, while injured soldiers and civilians stumbled through the streets. Princess moved swiftly, her heart pounding, searching for. She had seen him fight with courage unmatched, but now she feared what she might find. Then she saw him. He was leaning against a shattered wall, blood trickling from a deep cut across his shoulder. His breathing was heavy, and every movement seemed to cost him effort. Her heart lurched. He had never appeared so fragile, so human. Rushed to his side, brushing debris from his clothes and pressing her hands to the wound, but she knew the injury ran deeper than any simple bandage could fix. I'm fine," said, his voice strained but calm. "We stopped them, that's what matters." He tried to push her back gently, but she refused, shook her head, tears threatening to fall. "No, you shouldn't be here alone, bleeding while the city burns. You've given everything and you can't keep doing it like this." She pressed her hand harder to his wound, her mind racing. The soldiers around them worked to tend to the injured, but their attention kept returning too. He had saved countless lives today, and they knew it. Watched as his eyes, fierce yet tired, scanned the battlefield one last time. He had been willing to sacrifice himself, willing to take blows meant for others, all because he had the heart to care. She realized in that moment how mortal he truly was, and how extraordinary that mortality had become in the face of such impossible odds. Tried to stand, but his legs faltered, caught him, holding him upright. She could feel his strength fading, yet his spirit remained unwavering. "Princess," he whispered, his hand brushing against hers, "I told you I'll protect you, no matter what." The words, simple yet heavy with meaning, made her chest ache. How many mortals could truly give so much, risk everything, and still find the courage to fight on for others? The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the battlefield, painting the ruined city in gold and red. His heart pounded as she realized something frightening and wonderful at the same time had been the heart of the entire defense. Without him, the city would have fallen. Without him, countless lives would have been lost. He was mortal, fragile, and yet he had done what no alien warrior could. He had inspired hope, bravery, and unity where despair had reigned. She helped him to a safer place, guiding him through the chaos to a makeshift medical area. He winced with every movement, yet he never complained. His eyes met hers, and she saw something she had not expected, a quiet pride, a serene acceptance of what he had done. He had given everything he had, and now he trusted her to keep him safe. Felt her hands trembling as she pressed gently against his wound, murmuring soothing words she did not know she knew. The night settled over the city, quiet except for the distant crackle of fires and the groans of the injured. Sat beside, refusing to leave his side. She held his hand in hers, fingers entwined, and whispered into the cooling air, "You are not just a mortal, you are my hero, the bravest soul I have ever known." Smiled faintly, despite the pain. "And you are worth every risk," he said, voice weak but sincere. In the darkness, realized the truth of it all. Mortality did not mean weakness. It meant the courage to choose to fight, the strength to protect others, and the willingness to give one's life for something greater than oneself. A human had proven that beyond any shadow of doubt, and in that quiet, fragile moment, she understood that her childhood savior had become more than she had ever imagined, a living testament to the power of heart, courage, and love. The palace was quiet now, the fires of battle reduced to faint smoke curling into the night sky. Princess stood at the balcony overlooking the city, her heart heavy with exhaustion and gratitude. The soldiers moved among the wounded, tending to them with care, but her thoughts were only on. He had saved the city, saved countless lives, and yet he had done it as a mortal, a human among aliens, small and fragile, yet unbroken. Lay on a cot in the palace infirmary, bandages wrapped tightly around his shoulder and arm. Sat beside him, her hand resting lightly over his. She traced the lines of his face, the small scars that marked a life of struggle, and she realized fully the magnitude of what he had accomplished. This human, who had once been just a boy to her, had returned and become the hero of an entire kingdom. Her chest swelled with pride, awe, and something far deeper that she had not expected. She whispered softly, leaning closer so only he could hear, I never realized, I never knew how extraordinary you truly are." He opened his eyes slowly, looking at her with that familiar calm, that unshakable steadiness. "I only did what I had to," he said, voice faint but unwavering. "I couldn't let anything happen to you or your people." Felt tears welling up, but she blinked to hold them back. She remembered the small boy she had trusted so completely, the boy who had pulled her from the collapsing building centuries ago. At that moment, she understood the truth of what had been in her heart all along. He had always been her protector, her courage, and her hope. Time had changed his appearance, given him scars and strength tempered by experience, but his heart remained the same. And in that heart, she saw a bravery that surpassed any alien warrior she had ever known. The court had gathered, still wary of his presence, but ignored them. Their whispers could not touch the realization blooming inside her. She rose from the cot, her hand still lightly resting on his. "You saved us all," she said softly, letting the words carry both gratitude and awe. "Not because of your size, your weapons, or your skill, but because of who you are. Your heart is stronger than any strength I have ever known." Smiled faintly, his hand lifting to brush hers. "I'm just a human," he said almost shyly. "Fragile, short-lived, but I fight because I care." Felt her chest tight. That simple truth, spoken so humbly, carried more weight than any sword, any army, any fleet of alien ships. He had reminded her and her people that true power did not belong only to those born strong. It belonged to anyone who dared to love, to protect, and to act even when the odds seemed impossible. She sank back beside him, feeling the warmth of his presence, the steadiness of his breath. "And that is why you are more than a savior. You are the heart of this kingdom. You remind us of what it means to be brave, to be human, and to care when the world tries to tell us not to." He looked at her with quiet gratitude, his eyes reflecting the flickering lights of the city below. For a long moment, neither spoke. The palace was silent except for the distant sounds of the wounded being tended. Felt a peace she had not known in centuries. She realized that the human she had once trusted as a boy was now an unshakable part of her life, someone she could not imagine living without. And in that realization she found hope, not just for the kingdom, but for the bond that had survived centuries, across worlds, and against every expectation. As the twin moons rose high above the palace, casting silver light over the city, whispered once more, "You were always my savior, and now I understand you always will be." He smiled faintly, squeezing her hand gently, a small, mortal gesture that carried more power than any royal decree. And in that moment, Princess understood the truth she had long ignored. Courage, love, and heart could surpass any strength, any magic, any alien might. The city was quiet now. The fires had died down, leaving only smoke rising like gray ghosts into the sky. Soldiers moved carefully through the streets, helping the wounded, repairing the damage, and comforting the frightened. Princess walked beside, her hand gently holding his. He still bore the marks of battle, his body weak but his spirit unbroken. She felt a mixture of relief and awe. This human, once a boy who had saved her as a child, had become the savior of her entire kingdom. The court watched silently as approached in the great hall. Whispers ran through the nobles. A human had never been honored this way, much less entrusted with the safety of the princess herself, but ignored them all. She knew the truth, the power that came not from strength, size, or alien bloodlines, but from courage, heart, and loyalty, had proven that. And now she wanted the world to see it too. She said softly, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her, "You have done more than anyone could ever imagine. You fought when others feared. You protected when others fled. You are not just my savior, you are the heart of this kingdom. You have shown us all what true courage means." His eyes softened as he looked at her. "I did what I had to because I could not stand by and do nothing," he said, voice still weak but firm. "I never wanted to be a hero. I only wanted to protect you and everyone who could not protect themselves." Felt a lump in her throat. The same human heart that had saved her as a child had carried the weight of an entire kingdom now, and it was still humble, still gentle, still unwavering. The princess stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You are extraordinary, and you have changed more than just this city. You have changed the way we see ourselves and the way we see what strength truly is." She paused, her eyes shining. "Not all power is measured in size or magic. Sometimes the smallest, most fragile being can carry the heaviest responsibility and succeed." Smiled faintly, a tired but content expression. "I am human," he said simply. "Fragile, short-lived, but I fight for what matters and I always will." His heart swelled. She had realized now more fully than ever that his mortality was not weakness, it was proof of bravery. A mortal heart could inspire hope, could rally others, could achieve the impossible. He was living proof that courage and love were stronger than any alien fleet, any army, any power in the galaxy. In the days that followed and worked together to rebuild the city, soldiers trained under his guidance, learning not only to fight but to act with ingenuity and heart. Civilians told stories of the human who had impossible odds, and slowly, whispers of admiration spread across the kingdom. Became a living legend, not because of alien magic or extraordinary strength, but because of courage that refused to break. One evening and stood on the balcony, watching the twin moons rise over the restored city. The streets were quiet, filled with people returning to their homes, rebuilding their lives and smiling despite the scars left behind. Turned to, taking both his hands in hers. "You were always my savior," she whispered. "Not because you were strong or immortal, but because your heart never failed, and I will never forget it." Squeezed her hands gently, smiling with a warmth that carried across centuries. "And you, princess, were always worth saving. Always." They stood together, watching the stars appear one by one, feeling a connection that had survived time, danger, and impossible odds. In that quiet moment, the kingdom understood something profound. True strength was not measured by power or lineage, but by the courage to act, the heart to love, and the willingness to sacrifice. And the mortal human had proven it in every way. The city would remember him forever, not as a boy, not as a human, but as a hero who showed that even the most fragile beings could change the universe. And Princess, finally free to love without fear, knew that her childhood savior would always be by her side, a living symbol of hope, courage, and the enduring power of the human heart.